maybe I should have put some clothes on then.
Hey, that's all right. I think you're, living up to it's rock and roll, right? Who cares?
Hey, you can't see the bottom half, so like, no, because I'm sitting here in me red grundies, and which is it's just rhyming slang for undies.
There's tons of dates that Rose Tattoo has coming up, but will there be any U.S. shows? I know you said a couple of years ago that you're planning on wrapping up the band soon, and I know there's been a couple attempts to get back over here that haven't worked out.
26.
Yeah, is there any
26? 26 is 50 years, so we're done. And unfortunately, the costs involved. We can't bring DeMarco, so no offense, but it's like they won't let DeMarco into Britain, the UK, because of his criminal record.
Oh, okay.
And so I've sort of last time we were obligated to go there because the dates that we had to honour were cancelled, because they sent us home the first year of the plague. And so we couldn't do those dates. So we really had to go back, and we had to use a German drummer, and leave Paul in Germany while we went and did those 4 dates in the UK. But I said at the time, I said, look, no offence, but I won't come back to the UK without him. So because we'll reapply for his visa, but unless they relax that, that thing about his conviction.
Sure.
And, because I don't know if you know too much about it, but it was arms related, he was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's it's fairly serious. So we've been told by a lawyer in Los Angeles who works for the company that wants to book the tours. Their advice at the moment is that he would not get a visa.
And you don't want to do it without him, of course.
No.
And the last
and that means we all miss out. But there are other. Sorry, just to bring you completely into the picture.
Yeah,
it's not entirely just that. There's the enormous costs. See, but like even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was financially viable. And in the last administration, I think they've done it to tighten up security. They say security, but I think it's more than that. But they've made it almost economically impossible because it costs around about $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 per visa.
Yeah, it's crazy expensive for sure.
And the first time we didn't spend the money, but we did the paperwork. A friend of ours here, who's an old friend of the band's, but he did publishing, he did intellectual property, etc. So he's a showbiz lawyer, and he went through the motions for us. We paid him a nominal fee to do it, but nowhere near what it was. So he made all the applications, and they just knocked it straight. They just knocked it back. I said no.
Well, the last time that sorry, go ahead.
Well, he was applying for one of those import-export type grants.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A grant, but no, it didn't work.
The last time that Rose Tattoo was over here in the States was that Aerosmith tour, right? That was the last time you guys were over here.
Yeah, we did 2 legs with Aerosmith, and we toured with the Top, and we toured previously with them through Europe, and that was so successful as a coupling. Yeah, because myself and the other members of the band have always been huge ZZ Top fans. I think they're probably one of the greatest for my tastes. You know, like they're probably in the top 3 or 4 favorite bands of all time for me. I think Billy Gibbons is one of the best guitar players. But Frank is an amazing drummer, fucking for me. And he's the thing about Frank. They don't play the same, but him and DeMarco, the things I love about them as drummers is the same things. Is their lack of urgency playing a backbeat, and that, you know, because no one plays a backbeat like Frank Beard. He's just fucking classic, you know. Just it's just so back, and it's just so fat, and it's just like I whenever we play with them, and you know, hopefully we'll do it again in the future. But I'll stand side of stage, and I love watching the guitar players. I mean, God rest his soul, Dusty. But and I'm interested to see the new fella live. But I mainly watch Frank. You know, I just think he's an amazing player. But yeah, they were the 2 major acts that we worked with during that our touring in America. We worked with Pat Travis, and we worked with Nazareth a few times, and there was a few other bands. But I would have loved to have done a tour with several other bands, which happen to be, you know, my favourite bands, American bands. Would have loved to have worked with Leonard Skinner, because you know, we play pretty much the same sort of music. It's just that we play boogie, or you know, swing shuffle boogie. We play it our way, you know, and sure. That's the thing we had in common with Top. And see, Ted Nugent, I think, is just, I would have loved to have done a tour with Ted Nugent. I mean, there was even a time where I was going to, I was living in America, and I did my album there, Blood from Stone, and which was, I think, 88 or 89. And I was living in Los Angeles, and I was hanging out to see Leslie West, who I think is the greatest white blues guitar player. Him and Billy Gibbons, like, you can't get any better than that. Stevie Ray Vaughan, of course. But I was going to invite Leslie West to join the band.
Oh, wow.
I just thought, like, and if he doesn't want to join Tats, which I assumed he wouldn't, I was going to say, well, you know, but see, he doesn't need a singer. So that's the point. You know, he's a great singer.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, we've missed the opportunity now to work. Well, of course, because some of those people are no longer with us. But and we're running out of time to, I suppose, to get back to the original question. I despair that we probably won't get the opportunity to come back and even, like, the best we could hope for would be a club run or a support maybe for ZZ Top, because we've always had that good relationship with them. Whenever they've been out here, we've always done, at their request, we've always done their supports out here.
Real quick, didn't they? Wasn't there recently a Leslie West tribute just a few weeks ago? I think they did a big tribute concert. Is that right?
Over there? Well, I'm not sure.
I think they did in Los Angeles with a bunch of different guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know the thing about it is that I think, this is just a personal observation. I have not seen too many guitar players that can play like Leslie. he had a, I've been a devotee since the first note I ever heard him play. So we're going back quite a long way, like to Mountain, like before Mountain, the band, there was like Leslie West's,
Yeah.
Mountain, so to speak. But I think the live jam of Nantucket Sleigh Ride on the live album. So they've got an album out with 3 live tracks one side, and the whole B side is I think 12 or 13 minutes of Nantucket Sleigh Ride recorded live, and I think that's one of the greatest pieces of live music that has ever been recorded. I think some of those Fillmore recordings. One of my favourites is Stevie Marriott with the very, very young Frampton playing guitar live at the Fillmore, which was. But yeah, there's some great live recordings done in those days. But yeah, I think Nantucket Sleigh Ride. I've never heard a better live recording of a band. They were on fire that night. They were just like, they were almost like levitating. But yeah, so it's sad because I'm committed to. I'll be 76 this year. It's almost fucking obscene, if not sort of like inappropriate, that I'm still, getting out there and doing it. But I'm still able. So I always said that as long as I'm able, when I become, and and I'm relying on the other guys in the band too, to sort of tap me on the shoulder and say, "Listen, Ango, I think it's time you gave it away." But I think I'll be okay pushing through till 26.
Well, I saw some recent footage I was watching of you guys, and I mean, my God, you still sound like you did on the first record. I mean, it really is remarkable how great your voice still is after all these years.
Well, thank you. That's probably the most appropriate thing you could have said at this juncture. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for the observation, for your compliment. Thank you. But last year we had to postpone the second half of our gigs in Australia, and it precluded us, or it earlier on in the year I had some medical issues that came up, and I've had a neck. I had a blood clot taken out of my neck last year.
Oh wow!
And it was like a 90% plus blockage, and they think I had a mini stroke, but because of it. But the surgeon said, "Well, there's two. We have to operate because it's too far gone." So he said, "There's 2 dangers attached to it that we need to, you need to be aware of." And he said, "You may have a stroke during the operation. That's not uncommon. But these days, with modern medication and all that kind of stuff, because the operation is done under a local, you're actually partially awake because they have to keep you. So it's not a general. So you're not out like a light because they have to keep your vitals. So if you start to slip away or you have a stroke, they can, bring you back to total reality and then work on you in that." But so that didn't happen. So that was good. But he said the other consideration is that it could change the sound, the timbre of your voice. And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Is that a problem?" And I said, "Well, I'm a singer." And this guy didn't know me from Adam, right? So he said, "Oh, are you?" He said, "Oh, well, that's a major concern for you." And I said, yeah, it is. I said, what would be the effects? And he said, well, in the most drastic of cases, it could be a complete loss. You won't be able to sing because you won't be able to exert, because talking, is, and even raising your voice, but to sing puts, like 5 times more pressure, if you like, or exertion, not only on your vocal cords, but, from the top of your lungs upwards, right? So he said it may affect that. And I said, oh, okay. He said, so it's a consideration. And I said, well, what's the alternative, like as far as an operation? And he said, well, in your case, it's so far advanced, there is none. He said, we have to operate. Otherwise, you'll have a major stroke or a major heart attack. So he said, you really don't have any choice. So, I had to go ahead and get it done, which I was willing to take the chance, obviously, because it's life-saving.
Sure, of course.
And yeah, so, but in the meantime, the funny story is, this is the funny part, his receptionist, he says to her, she told me the story later, he came out, now I'd left, right? He comes out and he goes, do you know that guy's a singer? And she said, yeah, I know exactly who he is, right? Don't you? And he said, no, I had no idea, right? Because he's Caribbean, his people were from the Indian continent.
Oh, okay.
From some part in India, I think Pakistan, I'm not sure. But the last 3 generations of his family come from the Caribbean. So that's where he did his university and all this kind of stuff. So and he had no idea who I was. And so she Googled me and showed me. So the next time I go in there, he goes, oh, Mr. Angry. Because he was up there, and up until that stage, he was calling me Gary, right? So
yeah.
And he said, oh, Mr. Angry, how are you? I said, I'm good, thanks. I said, well, where'd this angry thing come from? And he said, well, that's your name, isn't it? I said, yeah, but you've always called me Gary, And he said, well, that was on your, your details. And I said, oh, well, yeah. I said, so anyway, we got a laugh out of that because he said the effect that it may have on my voice, that it may give it a rough edge. And he said, and I said, well, it's pretty rough already. So he was quite, we had a bit of a laugh over that, both of us, which was funny. But anyway, the surgery was successful. My advice to you is, what are you, in your 30s? Like,
oh man, you're aging me. I'm 28.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was going to say early 30s, mid to 30s, but so that's why you shouldn't have a beard, because you've got, let the baby face shine out.
It definitely does age me, that's for sure.
But talk to your GP about having scan on your arteries, particularly your neck, and they don't want to do this stuff very often. But if you start having, it's like prostate. When Pete died of prostate, I become an ambassador for prostate cancer, and you got to start young, because otherwise, by the time you get the symptoms, like, I had drastic symptoms leading up for the year or 2 leading up. I had energy problems, and I had sort of like circulation problems, obviously. So, I wasn't thinking as clearly. I love to read, and I found that reading was just gave me headaches, or made me really super tired. But it was all to do with the fact of the lack of blood going through my brain that carries the oxygen through. So my advice to young men, because predominantly the thickening of arteries predominantly affects men.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the older I get, the more and more I do start to worry about my health. I mean, when you're a kid or whatever, I mean, you just don't take it seriously. But then these little things start to happen, and I mean, too many people we've lost, and all sorts of stuff. It is very wise to get a leg up on and start taking care of yourself now, as opposed to later, for sure.
Well, the thing about it is, the old proverb, prevention is better than cure.
Exactly, 100%.
Mm. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm
So,
sure we didn't sort of hook up over these thousands and thousands of kilometres to talk about my medical condition.
well, hey, I did want to ask. You guys recently did a handful of shows with Slash, and obviously the GNR
Yeah.
connection goes back to their first EP, the Live Like a Suicide, back in '85 when they covered Nice Boys. But how long have you?
Well, it goes back to it. It goes back to that Aerosmith tour.
Oh, no kidding! I was going to ask you how long,
Yeah.
how far that goes back, and
Yeah.
how long
Yeah.
you've
They were
known
just
Slash.
kids then.
Yeah. Wow. How did you meet them then? Early on.
No, we didn't actually. They saw us because they were huge fans of Aerosmith. I mean, everybody is.
Yeah, of
I
course.
think Aerosmith is probably the last. No, not really. I mean, I've always been into country music, so I think in the last 10, 15 years, I've gone back to my American roots, if you like. So I'm listening to. I've always listened to a lot of Tamla Motown, a lot of R&B, soul music, but I've gone back listening to a lot of the early influences of. I think so. Yeah, I think probably Aerosmith. I mean, obviously ZZ Top, pardon me, Leslie West, people like that. But earlier than that, bands like Grand Funk and even earlier than that, the Young Rascals and Vanilla Fudge, and sort of going back to that sort of 70s, 60s, 70s era. And then, not too much has come out of America that's excited me in the rock and roll sense. I mean, things like Bruce Springsteen and stuff. I mean, that's rock and roll, or it's at least rock. And, it's wonderful music and wonderful songs. But in recent days, I've gone back to country music, and I've always loved since the very, very early days of my earliest influences. I didn't know it then, but my uncle, who had a wonderful record collection, had some very rootsy albums and obscure artists, which I've never even heard of since then. But the most popular of those days would have been like Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, and of course all the blues artists, like the early blues artists. John Lee Hooker, of course, was just my absolute favourite. But Bill Brunsey, and I've got dozens and dozens of albums of their early recordings. So I've gone back listening to that. It's kind of like, I suppose I am coming spiritually full circle.
Yeah.
So I'm going back and visiting that. But because of the device, I've been able to appreciate some contemporary stuff, which has its roots, like the Rainbow Girls. I don't know if you're aware of them, but
I'm not. No.
They're like a harmony. It's more. It's kind of like modern Appalachian stuff, and that early music that I was mentioning a minute ago. I was hearing this wonderful music, banjos and violins and piano, accordion, squeeze boxes, and no drums, because it was all the music was percussion, but it was Appalachian music. It was, and then of course, years and years later, you discover the people the modern people that were influenced by Appalachian music. You've got your Crosby, Stills and Nashes, and and the LA sort of folk sound. But it has its origins in that music. So
Sure.
But there's some amazing young acts. I'm just trying to think of what their name, but there's three blonde girls, sisters, that I've been listening to a lot lately, and apparently they're going to be touring in America. Hopefully they'll tour out here at some stage. Three very young and possibly beautiful, gorgeous young girls, all blonde. And one plays, well, they both play guitar, and one plays banjo, and they sing beautiful harmonies. But so that's the sort of influences that I'm listening to now, because I don't find, for my tastes, there's not a whole lot of stuff coming out of America that I'm aware of. I mean, there's some there. One of the things I've been watching on the phone is the device. Some of these childhood prodigies, these young kids, like there's this, I think they're sisters, I'm not sure, but one's blonde and she plays guitar. She's about like 12. And then a little dark-haired girl, I think maybe her sister, she plays drums. And there's a bass player somewhere, unless they're using bass tracks, but they're covering some of the classics, and they're fucking amazing. Like they just, I mean, you can tell there's so much talent there and so much understanding of the music they're playing, which is not their generation. And they've had these several generations of what I call puerile, disposable music, like the sort of Taylor Swift's, the sort of Beyonce's, the sort of whatever, that whole, you know what I mean? That sort of like, America's Got Talent, I call it that fucking, the only influence they ever had were, it wasn't real music, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just a cranky old bastard having a whinge about, But I think when you see these young people play, and they're so good, so you can only imagine when they grow up, they're going to be amazing. So there's a great optimism within me that like all things, real rock and roll, the blues-based roots, country, rockabilly, like that whole influence will come back. I've even seen some footage of Chinese and Taiwanese and Japanese kids playing. Like there's this young kid, he plays with, I think it's his father, and his father's a great guitar player. But this kid's he's in his early teens, and he's playing like classic soft string guitar or electric guitar or six-string steel string guitars. And between the father and the son, they're extraordinary. I mean, I just think, Jesus, there's so much talent,
That there is, and especially...
Which brings me...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, don't we think, is it appropriate if we get a shameless plug for some dates that we've got coming up? Because I've got a list from Catherine. Catherine's our publicist, she who must be obeyed, the great love of my life. And, I said to her once, because she's an ex-model, so she's like 6 foot tall.
Oh, okay.
And, she's a big lady, a big tall lady. Because I said to her once, I said, you know what, maybe we should hook up. And she said, don't be ridiculous. She said, we're friends, So she said, she said, because she said to me, she said, you're the biggest floozy in the world. She said, why would I want to hook up with you? And I said, so it's just because I'm short. And she went, no, don't be ridiculous. She says, we're friends. Like, we work together. And she said, I want that kind of, anyway, it's funny. It was just a joke between us. But anyway, she's got a few things that I have to mention.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I said and she said, she's got the Buckcherry dates, Were we meant to do this interview previously? Because I've got notes here, and it says mention, and it's got slash. So maybe that was another podcast, or maybe I had to postpone you for a while, or
no.
but she's got slash, and then she's got.
This was going to be. This was originally going to be yesterday. So only a day ago. We only had to move it a day.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So you would. I wouldn't have had to have mentioned slash with you because actually we only finished like a week ago.
Yeah, I saw those.
But anyway,
just happened. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other dates that I have to mention, of course, is the Buckcherry dates, which I am personally very excited about.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about those because I feel like, for one,
good.
I love Buckcherry, right? I mean, in my opinion, Buckcherry is probably one of the last great true rock and roll bands, right? Because there's not really, like you were just saying, there's not really a whole lot of good rock and roll bands out there, and I feel like they are one of the last ones, still putting out good records. And I was reading online, I think it was on your Facebook page, you had posted that when you first heard of Buckcherry, I think you said you were at a strip club or something, which is a very fitting.
I think I said a gentleman's club,
well,
but yes, it was a strip club.
And what better of that's such a fitting place to discover a band like Buckcherry.
Yeah, really. Yeah. We'd gone there. We were doing a series of dates around the country with the late and great Billy Thorpe. If you ever get to see, there's a doco, or not a doco, there's a DVD out called Boggo Road, and which Boggo Road was a prison that they closed, and they held gigs there. And there's some great footage of the late and great Billy Thorpe, who was an amazing American. He lived in America for a long time in Los Angeles. An Australian guitar player, singer, and he comes out and joins us doing the old blues classic "Going Down." And if you're interested, just Google live at Boggo Road Rose Tattoo, and it'll come up.
Yeah, I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah, but God rest his soul. That was a great moment. But yes, we were doing this series of dates around Australia with Bill on and I think it might have been that tour. I'm not sure, because we did several with Bill. And anyway, we decided we had a night off, and there's a series of men's clubs out here called Rhino, and that's their logo, is a rhinoceros. And I think there's a club in each city, and it's a real men's club. It's got, you got your cigar room, and you got your fucking whiskey drinking room, and you got you got these little where the girls come in and do lap dances and whatever, whatever you can afford. All that they favour you with, and so Billy said, like the guy that ran this series of clubs invited us to go down, and they said, look, come down, the night's on us, So we went there. We had we had some interesting, some preparation. We had some chemicals involved, and we got there, and they had. We went into the cigar room actually, and smoked some really, really good weed. And anyway, we're flying, having a great time. And I remember sitting in this lounge setting with these couple of naked girls. Well, not naked, but they were, 99% there. And anyway, I'm listening to, they're talking all amongst themselves. And anyway, I heard this music, and I thought, fuck, I like that's fucking great. The guitar sounds, 'cause really good system in this club. So I said, I got up and I'm looking for the speakers, and they had the in ceiling sort of Bose thing. So anyway, I walked out of the room onto the sort of mezzanine, and they had bigger speakers out there, and I'm listening to that. So I said to the bouncer, I said to the bouncer, I said, where's the DJ? And he said, oh, well, he's upstairs. And I said, can I, I want to go and meet him. And he said, yeah, okay. So I went up there and said, like, well, who's that you're playing? And he said, oh, it's an American band called Buckcherry. And I'd never heard of them. He said, I'm a big fan, they've only, I think at that stage, they only had a couple of albums out, Yeah. And so it must have been one of the early ones. And I said, well, is there any chance you can play some more? And he said, mate, fucking oath, I love them. He said, so yeah, he said, I'll play some during the night. Like, I can't play every track. So, I got to hear about 5 or 6 over the night before I fucking got too blitzed to know what I was doing. But that's where I fell in love with Buckcherry. And as you say, quite appropriately, the most appropriate setting, having seen the band. They were out here, was it last year or the year before? I can't remember, but I went and saw them live because I thought, fuck yeah. Scotty Crawford, our manager, said they're coming out, I said, well, I really want to go and see them. I went and saw them live and fucking blew me away. I think the band is amazing. They paid us a great compliment, actually. Two of the members said that if we ever needed a sit-in, like someone to take up some slack on a tour or whatever, Billy said, because he's well, as you say, a badass slide player. That the band I thought were fucking great, but the singer he's amazing.
Yeah,
I watched it. I'm not easily fascinated. I use that word advisedly. I'm not easily fascinated by singers. Like I can watch Steven Tyler all night, and did on a dozen different occasions. I just stood there mesmerized because he's such a charismatic, but he's enigmatic. He's all the matics. He's he's the consummate front man. It's like he's just you just watch him and I just think, fuck, I never get bored watching him. And I felt the same thing with the singer from Buckcherry. I just thought he's so good at what he does. And it's just like all great singers. It's just his fluidity. It's his connection, with the divine. It's just that real magical, spiritual connection. They're fucking. I'm really excited. We are as a band because Ronnie Simmons, who's our most recent member and youngest, spent a lot of time in Los Angeles playing. He played in the Ramones. Plays with Faster Pussycat, plays with a few other bands, and he's sort of like a gun for hire. But he told me ever since he was a kid he wanted to play guitar in Rose Tattoo. So here he is. But he has, pardon me, while he was there, he sort of hung with all these guys and went and saw lots of gigs. So he's very excited about playing these dates. And I think, and I said to Scotty, I said, mate, can we sort of double? I think there's only 3 or 4 dates.
Yeah, I believe so.
And I said, like, is there any chance to? He said, well, maybe next year, because they're establishing themselves, live sets. So they have a big following here. People just listen to their music, but there's a difference in getting those people to turn up to a live gig. I mean, that's just universal. I mean, if everyone turned up to, that buys your records, turned up to a gig, we'd all be millionaires.
Of course, yeah. Is it sort of a weird or a humbling kind of feeling though, like having Rose Tattoo, a truly legendary band, almost 50 years now, like you said, open up for a band that's quite a bit more modern, like Buckcherry? I don't know the right. Is it a strange? Does it make you feel a little weird, like opening for somebody that came out 20 plus years after Rose Tattoo started?
No, not really, because the way we've always looked at it, and this goes back to the very very early days, when the band wasn't actually a band as yet, and we talked a lot about the philosophies, if you like, behind playing rock and roll music, and the kind of the role that we play as bands, as writers. I remember having this conversation with Von on several occasions, among other singers, about how there's certain writers who set out not to write endless love songs about chicks, because there's no historic content except in a personal sense, right? A chick might inspire. Some of the great love songs have been inspired by actual relationships. But Bon and I and other, like, he introduced me to Alex Harvey, so there's another one. But we sort of were carrying on the tradition of chronicling, if you like, history or making social observations of the day on the world around us and the world that we lived in. And I remember we were waxing lyrical one night. We were absolutely leglessly drunk, which we're having a very deep and meaningful conversation about, we were street poets, and like it was up to us to record, like to write songs about life, not just chicks, but like life. And that's the thing I love about Buckcherry. They tend to do the same thing. I mean, I find that there's a depth in their music which is very appealing to someone who has always, I don't think serious bands or artists take their role frivolously or think it's a frivolous role to have, but I don't think there's a lot of artists that set out to really create something meaningful. They want to be rock stars. They want to be, it's all about sex and drugs and rock and roll. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, and then there are other bands like ourselves that we've always wanted to personify. And I remember Pete's words, Pete Wells. We'll still sing songs for the forgotten, for the abandoned, for the left behind, the marginalised. He said, "We'll stand up for the working class man, but we'll stand up for the people." Like, I suppose in the tradition of Bob Dylan, Woody Guthrie, and of course all the great blues singers. But I think one of the things, getting back to the Cherry, it doesn't matter to me, and it certainly doesn't matter to us as a band, like where we go on the bill. It's just that we want to play music with them, not with them together, but obviously, but there might become of it the opportunity for some of us to work together in the future in some way. But the fact that we actually do gigs together is the most important thing. And that's what's really important to us, is that we admire that band and we love their music. So we want to do gigs with them, and we've been given the opportunity. And like I said, and I don't want to dwell on it, but like time for us as Rose Tattoo is running out. So it's kind of like there's a bucket list, and like we'd like to do certain things. Like I said before, there's certain people that we'd love to tour with or work with or whatever. And so when, and Scotty Crawford, who's our manager, he's promoting these dates. So he said, would you do the dates? You'll have to open up. And we said, well, we don't give a fuck, it's never bothered us, It's like going back to what I was saying about like Pete saying, if you go on first, it's like the old Jerry Lee Lewis thing, like when he burned his piano as he walked past the acts that were above him on the bill. He said, well, there you go, follow that. It's that principles in like Pete. I remember Pete saying, and we were opening for a big band here in Australia, and a lot of fans were outraged because the two bands were very competitive. Tats shouldn't be opening for them. They should be opening for the Tats, and fuck them, like they're going, who do they think? And Pete said, look, it's okay. We'll go out on the stage. We just dig a big fucking hole, and when they come out on stage, they fall in it. I just thought, there you go. That's it. Looking at the glass half full or half empty. Like, in other words, go out there and play a set that's so fucking good, they struggle to follow it, even though they're the main act. And that's not the case with Cherry. It's the case with Cherry all these years later is we just think so much of them as a band that we just like to do, like when they're gone, we go, well, fucking, we did some gigs with Buckcherry and it was fucking great. It was a great night of rock and roll.
Who was the other band that you were just talking about a minute ago?
Oh, nameless. Because they're still playing in Australia, and this sort of thing gets around.
Sure.
Yeah, not that I give a fuck, but you know what I mean. Like, it's a small industry here.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, no, I just saw Buckcherry a few months ago with they were I think they're still doing it right now. They're doing a co-headliner with Skid Row, and I've seen Buckcherry a bunch of times, but.
Oh,
yeah, fucking
yes, but the Skid Row without Sebastian, is it really Skid Row? Whoops.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I mean, look, of course, I prefer Sebastian Bach, but I got to say, their new singer. I mean, he's a young guy, but they sound fucking great. I mean, they fucking.
I have heard.
Yeah, I mean that guy can sing, and. He just recovered from cancer. He's got quite an inspirational story, but it's good.
Whoa.
Yeah, he had leukemia or something. I think he's in his early 30s. So he's really young guy, but no, he fucking crushed it. And Buckcherry, I saw them for the first time open up for Motley Crue. I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And Buckcherry is just an incredible band, and seeing Buckcherry and Rose Tattoo together would just be an incredible show that, unfortunately, most people outside of Australia will never get to see. But what a great bill for sure.
I have been talking to, and we haven't toured in Europe the last couple of years. It's mainly logistics, like economics, but our management in Germany is the guys that run Wacken.
Oh, okay.
And because we've known them. I mean, they were largely responsible, not for the early days, like the early 80s when we first went there, but when they brought us back in the 2000s to support another band that they were looking after, Boss Onkels, which is a German band. That predominantly only play in Germany. They play in Europe, but they play in Germany. They sing in German. They sort of predated Rammstein.
Oh, okay.
In the heavy rock sort of amazing band. But Thomas Jensen, who him and his partners, they are the people who started and run Wacken. And I've been saying to him for years, like, there's a few bands, like when we're sort of we're going to go over and do a tour. And they go, well, who are we going to get to do support? And because I've known Sebastian for a long, long time, years. I was introduced to him in '89 by Duff and Stephen. We were at a club in Los Angeles called the Lingerie Club, and that was a pretty funny night. But that story is going to be in the book, so I can't tell you. But that's when I first met him. But I have mentioned to Thomas in the last 10 years, see if you can get in contact with the agent of this 2 or 3 American bands, which I think would be very, very good, go well in the European circuit, because a lot of American bands tour, as you know, not just Germany, but through Europe per se. But they base themselves because there's a huge following for metal music or heavy rock music in Germany. And one of the bands that I've mentioned is Buckcherry, but I think it's always the cost of, because not too many people, they haven't got a huge following there, but they would have a following if they got there. And I think they have toured Europe, and from what I can tell. But I just thought they would be a great double for us to go around Europe to do because when we tour Europe, we do 6 weeks.
Yeah,
we play clubs and festivals.
Yeah. No, I mean that'd be incredible, and it's with time winding down, it's a bummer that I guess if you haven't had a chance to see Rose Tattoo, the opportunities are certainly coming to an end soon. But hey, one thing I did want to ask that I saw you say in another interview I thought was kind of interesting, was hoping you could expand upon it, something a little unrelated, but you brought up going to see Guns N' Roses in Australia a few years ago, and they had Angus come out, and you were saying that after the show you were talking to Angus backstage, and you said, hey, did you ever consider having Sammy Hagar sing for the band, early on, or when most recently when Axl filled in, and just what a great suggestion, and something that I don't know that a lot of other people would think about. Obviously, Angus didn't think of that, but that was a genius idea on your part.
Thank you. I love that being described as a genius idea. I think Sammy Hagar would have been a great singer from the very beginning. I mean, Brian's a great choice, and I get that. But I mean, you've only got to see Sammy's work in apart from his solo stuff, which is extraordinary. He's just an extraordinary singer. Amazing singer. And when he first came to prominence, if you like on a world stage, so to speak, was with Van Halen. But as a singer, I mean, he's amazing. And I just remember saying to Angus, because Ang and I hadn't seen one another for quite a lot of years, since the sort of mid-ladies. I think the last time I went to an AC/DC concert was here in Australia, and it was very brief. We just, we didn't have time to sort of talk, but Axl had asked, or the band had asked me to stay and do Nice Boys as an encore, and Angus to play a couple of songs with, because they'd just done this tour where he filled in.
Yeah.
And we were, Angus and I were catching up. So we were sort of, making up for lost time, I suppose. So there was a lot of banter around, like what we're going to do and blah, 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 blah. And that just came up. And I said, well, how did you go about it? And they didn't have auditions. He just selected. And, yeah, of course, range is a factor,
Of course.
but he also wanted, obviously someone who could sell tickets, those kind of things. I mean, yeah. So I just said, well, I think it was a great choice. I mean, obviously, any controversial choice made like that would the haters, so to speak, would come out of the woodwork. Oh, like how dare like. So fuck off, right? It's not your fucking band for a start.
Of course.
It's like, and that's the way Angus would have looked at it, right? Yeah, and yeah, and I said, it was a great, spirited, brave, appropriate choice. And I said, was there anyone else ever in the running? And he said, oh, I considered a couple, because Angus doesn't give too much away. I said, do you ever think of Sammy Hagar? And he looked at me and he went, fuck, no. And it was like, fuck, no. Why didn't I? Like, I said, well, he can sing the shit out of anything, Sammy.
100%.
He's just a fucking, what a monster,
Yeah.
And I said, and he's a pretty flashy dude on stage.
Of course.
Like, he's got great stage presence, great stage presence. And it was funny because, like Angus just shook his head and he went, no, mate. He said, fucking, wow, yeah, Sammy Hagar. So his reaction told me that he thought as much of Sammy as a singer as I did.
Yeah.
But it just hadn't occurred to him.
When Bon passed away, were you ever, did they ever reach out to you about potentially doing anything with the band or no? No? So you weren't even an option? No. Would you have even considered that, or were you just full on Rose Tattoo or nothing else?
Well, at the time we were going through a rough time, member wise, and we'd only reunited in the wake of it because Mick, our guitar player, was no longer in the band at that stage, and he actually was based himself out of London because the relationship between us and obviously AC/DC is not just the record label. It's we became good mates earlier on in the piece, which is how when they were just starting. I mean, that's how Phil came to play, because at that time when they first started playing around Melbourne, my band and Phil was in that band.
Buster Brown, right?
Was a band called Buster Brown. Yeah. Bingo! Oh, I'm impressed. Thank you. That's a great compliment that you know that much. But yeah, so we were, and Buster was having problems then, and I remember, we were, we were talking about Phil was a better player than the guy they had, and I said, Geordie, there was talk at one stage that Geordie might join AC/DC at playing bass because Buster was disintegrating. So anyway, all those years later, Rose Tats was very much on shaky ground, and we weren't getting along as people, and things were at a stalemate. And Mick was living in London, as it were, and he was hanging around with the guys, several other bands as well. There was a couple of other Australian bands over there, but he was hanging around with because he'd become good mates with Bob, and and also with Mark Evans. There was in other words, what I'm saying was it was a relationship that started here between Rose Tattoo and members of AC/DC, and it carried itself over. And so we were here. Mick was over there hanging around with them, and then we did the Assault and Battery album, and we went back over and toured with that in 80, 80, 81, and it was 80. It was the year. It was early, wasn't it? It was Bond died in 80, I think.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I think it was like February of 80. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Well, we were there not too long after that. Sort of interesting times. But no, I mean, the other thing too is that having, and like I said, from the early days, we formed very strong relationship with them, which led to us being signed by Elvis. Because no one else wanted to sign Rose Tattoo, and it was definitely the guys from Rose Tattoo, from AC/DC, who got Rose Tattoo signed. The boys from Elvis interested and got us signed. Bond is the only singer that I was ever comfortable with that got up and jammed with the band as a singer, and both Mel and Angus would often get up and jam with the band guitar wise. We do all the Johnny B. Goods and
sure,
Money and all the old rock classics, because they knew all those songs, and of course we did too. So yeah, they would often get up and jam. But the Tats we were during that period in Australia, there was a lot of people who used to just jump up with everybody else's band and have a jam, but we weren't like that. We were very sort of I suppose, exclusive. We were very, very particular about who we allowed on their stage with us,
Sure.
But the boys, like I said, the relationship went back. So I don't think Malcolm would have considered me for a second, because I think I was so close in character and identification and to Bond, and I think what they wanted to do, and I think it was a smart move. And let's face it, Malcolm, God rest his soul, was probably not one of the greatest rhythm guitar players in rock and roll history, but he's also, he ran that band. I mean, he was a very smart cookie, and he had a wonderful education from his brother George on the pitfalls and the intricacies of the rock and roll industry. And I think he purposely would have, and you think about the selection they made, a more opposite to Bond you couldn't get.
That is 100% fact, and it probably worked. I think it certainly worked in their favor.
I think if they'd have picked me, it would have been a huge mistake.
You think so? Huh? I mean, I guess I could.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been, I guess, probably a little more similar, than what it became. But it would have been interesting for sure, though. To if that ever happened, that would have been an interesting situation.
Yes, one that we will never actually ever. But it's
Yeah.
it's fun to. It's fun to. I personally, I going back to that conversation with Angus. I said, I'm going to wind the band up soon. What are you going to do? He said, I don't know. He said, but we'll figure out something. Because he was in that moment of sort of circling around, well, where do we go from here, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I said, well, in about 10 years, when we're both old and fucked, let's do a blues band because, Angus, like Malcolm, I mean, is a wonderful blues player. To sit with him just playing an acoustic guitar, and he's so masterful, and so like he plays just like all the old brown guys, the real blues, the godfathers of the blues. And he can play all that shit. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful guy. So I said to him, like, in about 10 years, when we're both old and fucked, let's do a blues band, He said, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So,
Hey,
yeah,
so maybe something down the road, potentially, huh?
Yeah.
Well, a few other things I do want to get to. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, here you go. But I'm having fun here.
Yeah, no, likewise. I wanted to ask about the record Beats from a Single Drum because from what I was reading, the record was initially released as a Rose Tattoo album, but then I think it was the song Suddenly had really taken off, and it got re-released as an Angry Anderson solo album. And for one, I listened to it earlier today. Obviously, quite a bit of a departure from Rose Tattoo, but I thought it was incredible and really great to see a different side. And the one similarity I thought, it was like, wow, some of these songs I thought you had a little bit of resemblance to Ozzy. And my fiance heard it in the background, and she thought the same thing. I don't know if anyone's ever made
Ozzy.
That. I swear, I forget the song. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not 1,000%. I don't know the record like the back of my hand, but there were a few points where I'm like, wow, this kind of sounds like Ozzy. Has anyone ever said that to you before? Made that comparison?
No, but I'm thrilled because Ozzy. I mean, let's face it, Ozzy. Like myself, he's not a singer's singer like Sammy.
Sure.
Sammy's not just a great performer, but his forte, his strength is the fact that he's such a wonderful singer, technically speaking.
Yeah.
But he sings with soul. But he's perfect. He's just a beautiful singer. Whereas singers like myself and Ozzy, and we were talking about Lemmy before. Some of the greatest singers haven't got technically the greatest voices, but they have a magic, that's rock and roll is about magic, all right? It's about creating moments, portals, if you like, that can take people into like a magic state. And that's what, that's the great thing about live performances, it's why people keep going back to see the Rolling Stones. They understand that they all look like they're about 120, but the thing about it is that with the visuals, and it's not just about visuals, but there is a magic that is produced that they still can come up with, and it's like when you hear David Gilmour play guitar, it's like this is earthly, but it comes from somewhere else, and we label that magic. And I think the essence is just that. It's and I love to use the word because it's so evocative. And Ozzy's one of those amazing characters, like Lemmy. Lemmy had a voice sounded. He's not a great singer,
of course. Sure.
Like tone wise, whatever. Bon wasn't. I'm not. But we bring something else to it, and when I watch footage of the early Ozzy, when they first came to prominence with Paranoid and stuff, and War Pigs and all that classic early stuff, and then 30 years later, and he's like, he hasn't changed. He doesn't change. And it's just because who and what he is so quirky.
Yeah.
And but what is produced, like he smarted up to pick beautiful, wonderful players, but they create magic. Now he says it's black magic, but it's that's where him and I part ways, because I love that part. But Sharon, I'm the Prince of fucking Darkness, fucking Sharon, fucking. I'm the Prince of fucking Darkness, and you go, because he doesn't. He sort of believes it, but he doesn't believe it. That's something that was invented. Right, I remember seeing a great interview with him. He said, what about you bit the head off a rat? He said, I fucking never fucking bit the fucking head off a fucker. He said, who's gonna fucking bite the head off a fucking rat? And it was a fucking chicken, I think. But he never bit the head off anything. Right? It's just a myth that was grown up around this persona. But it's the persona and that's why I'm thrilled. I am so fascinated. So this is something really personal between you and I. If you get the opportunity to listen to that album, I'll tell you the story about that album, and then you can get back to me at another time. Like maybe we can do another one of these.
Yeah. And
you can tell me the songs or the lines or whatever. Just write it down, just like. But that song, I joined the Tats, for all intents and purposes, had wound up, and I wanted to not abandon the Tats, because I always romantically, optimistically, I always thought, like the Tats, because of its volatility between the members, we always had periods where we couldn't live without one another. And then we couldn't stand one another. And then we'd be apart for a year, 2 years, whatever. And then we had to get back together. It was kind of like we couldn't leave it alone, So I always knew in the back of my heart, we'd break up, we'd come back, we'd break up, we'd come back. And that was, I resigned myself to that, as that was going to be our pattern for our rest of our lives, our career together as Rose Tattoo, is that we would have these periods where we couldn't live without one another, and then we couldn't live with one another. Right? So during one of those periods, I said to our manager, I want to do some solo stuff. And I had my favourite singer and my favourite rock and roll band is the Faces, and I said I want to do something like that, R&B based, acoustic music, like just pretty much like the Faces, keyboards, and I wanted to write some songs that were about things that I cared about, which I've always done with Rose Tats, but I didn't want to replica Rose Tattoo. So we signed to Mushroom Records for a 3-record deal over 5 years. And so I, with a bunch of friends who ended up playing on the record, and we toured as that band, we wrote some songs, and I'd read the book that Winnie Mandela wrote, and so I just finished reading Nelson Mandela's biography, and I read Winnie Mandela, and I thought, well, if I'm going to write a love song, I don't want to write about his incarceration and his fight for freedom, because I kind of thought maybe the next album. And so I wrote a song about Winnie Mandela. I watched a documentary produced by the Cousteau family on this. They'd been studying the whale language for 10 years. and they come up with a documentary and a study. And it was the first study that had ever been done on the language of Wales. So I wrote that song, Calling, which is the way that, because Wales, their language is singing. And they sing their songs around the world underwater because, water's an amazing medium for sound to travel in. Anyway, long story short, so we came up with this album, the first of 3 albums that were Angry Anderson albums. I signed to Mushroom as Angry Anderson, not Rose Tattoo. Angry Anderson, a solo artist, that produced 3 albums over 5 years of this kind of material. And so the marketing, they started to market it, and it cost quite a bit of money. They had an American producer came out here, worked on several projects, including mine, a guy from Los Angeles, and the marketing department in those days they had these things called where they play the album to DJs. It was like a media thing, right? They'd invite them all for lunch, get them all full on fucking free food and booze, and then they'd play the album. It was a listening party. That's what they used to call it.
Yeah.
And they all sat there and they said, this is easy, this is how easily some people are manipulated. They said, what do you think? And they said, well, great songs, love the songs, Angry singing great, blah, 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 but who's going to buy Angry Anderson singing a song about fucking whales? And the story I was told was by someone that worked in the PR department. And she sat in on the meeting and she said that was the turning point. So the record manager, not Michael Gudinski, who owned them, but there was a manager that used to manage the label for him. He called a PR meeting and said, righto, it's going to fail. It'll fucking fail. So we're going to market it as Rose Tattoo, as the new Rose Tattoo lineup, the modern day Rose Tattoo, the new Rose Tattoo. Forget the past. Blah, blah, blah. So, this was before men had man buns, but this cunt would definitely be a candidate for a fucking man bun, right? But it was pre-man bun. But so, sorry, I just said cunt.
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay. So I thought I was out of line there. But anyway, so in this PR meeting, they switched from promoting me as a solo artist. And they said, okay, we either release it as Rose Tattoo and recoup, or we write it off. And in 10 years, you can have the fucking tapes. It was one of those fucking bullshit sort of fucking record. Anyway, it got released as Rose Tattoo. But you're right. A couple of years after that, Kylie is a huge hit show in America, in England, Neighbours, which is a big hit here in Australia, soap called Neighbours. Kylie, who, the pop princess, Kylie
Minogue.
Yeah, Kylie Minogue. So she picked Suddenly as the song she wanted to get. Mushroom Music used to supply all the music for Neighbours. It's part of their deal. I thought Falling, which is the other love song. I thought that was a better song. I still love that song. But the guy I co-wrote those songs with particularly those two love songs, and it was a strong co-writer on most of the material is a guy called Andy Sachon, who played bass in the band, but he was a wonderful piano player. But he plays bass now and has done for many years, spent many years playing bass for Shania Twain, but he is Billy Joel's bass player. Oh. So after we did that recording and that tour, he relocated to America and auditioned for Billy's band and got the job and, has done very, very, very well, very successful. He's still writing, wonderful songwriter. In fact, I actually said to him a while ago that once Rose Tats are over, I want to do at least 2 or 3 solo albums, and I was talking to him about collaborating again on some songs. But that's how that story came about, was that it was a marketing thing. And I said to them, if you market it as Rose Tattoo, it's not Rose Tattoo, it's my album. So it wasn't that and it wasn't Rose Tattoo music. I mean, I was in Rose Tattoo. I know what Rose Tattoo is. Of course. I'm the singer-songwriter or the lyricist for Rose Tattoo. Don't fucking tell me the new Rose Tattoo. This is the modern version. This is the more enlightened. This is the fucking, they're throwing around all this fucking marketing bullshit, about reinventing Rose Tattoo. No, I didn't want to reinvent Rose Tattoo because I knew in my heart of hearts eventually we'd get back together and we would be just what we've always been, which is a blues-based, boogie, like heavy edged, but we're a swing band, we're a boogie band,
So when that record came out,
anyway,
were fans like, "What the fuck is this?" when they first heard it?
I think, and rightfully so. There was a lot of outrage with the old Rose Tattoo fans, which I fully understood, but I knew that I had to weather that. Yeah. So where do you do that best? And then that's on the stage. So I put together this band. Most of them are on that album. And we went out and we played as Rose Tattoo, played those songs and some of the old material and fucking just killed it. Just fucking killed it. And we proved the point that we were as good a band, that lineup is what I'm saying. Whereas to their credit, they were as good a band as the old Rose Tats ever were. They just weren't the old Rose Tattoo. And then, of course, when suddenly became such a huge hit, and Scott Waterman and Aitman, or the English company, they said, "Look, we get it. If Mushroom don't want to continue your solo, we'll take you on. We'll sign you," because they already had Kylie and a few other artists that had big pop hits, and they said, we love the songs, we love the record, and they tried to. But Mushroom wouldn't give it away. They wouldn't give me away. So I did another album a couple of years later in Los Angeles, which I co-wrote with a wonderful guitar player called Michael Slamer, and that was the Blood from Stone album. Had a big hit here with that song too, with a song called Bound for Glory, and it was a minor hit through Europe, well, Britain anyway.
Do you have plans for any more solo stuff?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that I was talking to Andy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, about writing some more material. But when the Tats is done, so that's in a couple of years, 26, I've written a whole lot of stuff along the way that's not Rose Tattoo material, so I've written some stuff which lyrically, which I'm looking forward to collaborating with some people here predominantly, but there's a few players overseas that I've met as well, that I'd like to collaborate with. There's a wonderful guitar player who now plays guitar with Guns N' Roses called Richard Fortus.
Yeah.
And he'll be out here soon with his original band. So I'm hoping to get to go and see them. But Richard and I became close and really good friends, great mates, many years ago, when he was playing with the Axl Rose show, when Axl had Guns N' Roses before the Reformation.
Yeah.
Richard's very keen to. Richard's keen to do a band.
Oh, no kidding.
He and I have talked. Yeah, we've talked about doing an actual band, but it means me relocating to America, and that sort of comes with its own sort of problems as well. Yeah. But I've learned the hard way that you never say never. You never say no to anything, because life is such that you never know what's going to happen.
And everything happens for a reason.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, even the harshest of things, the worst things that can happen to you, philosophically, sometimes it's very difficult to live by your beliefs. And I do believe what you're saying. I absolutely fervently believe that everything has a purpose or a meaning. But when you suffer a great loss, it's hard then to reconcile. It's like not just talking about my son, but my mother is. I'm constantly reminded of having lost her, because she's in care, and we lost her to dementia about 5 or 6 years ago. Like, completely lost her. And so when I visit her now and I'm looking at her, and she still looks like my mother, but she's not my mother. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my great-grandma had dementia. I know it. It's horrible.
Yeah. Dementia destroys the person.
Yeah, 100%.
So they just physically look like them. Anyway, let's go on to cheerier matters.
Well, I did want to ask you just on that note, and then we'll wrap it up. But on that note, going back to your son, I don't want to rehash the whole situation, but I was curious: was it when that happened back in 2018, when he was tragically passed away? Was there any part of you that was like, I don't really know how I can carry on performing and all of that afterwards? Because a couple of years ago, it'll be 2 years ago this summer, my sister passed away. And, it's a very difficult thing. And my mom especially, very, very hard on my mom. But I find that the best way to cope with that type of thing is to, try to do as much as you can to take your mind off of it. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you're ever going to fully heal from something like that. When my sister passed, she was only 22. And, it's a horrible thing, but, I saw that, Rose Tattoo was out, back at it just a few months after that happened. Did that help you, sort of get over it and not get over it, but help to at least deal with it? Yeah.
It saved me. I'm so sorry about your sister. 22, Jesus. Yeah, the thing about it is that for the first couple of years, you struggle with the anger. You struggle with the need to seek vengeance. You struggle with the loss. You struggle with every aspect of. And I've spoken to parents that lost their kids to suicide, and I can't imagine what that must be like. But I've spoken to parents that have lost their kids to drug overdoses, to drownings, to car accidents, to the multiplicity of ways that you lose a child, and they can't understand that. That's the one thing that we share. But anyway, moving on from that, I was such a state of shock, and the only thing apart from my children and a very close-knit group of people, which of course included the band, because he was killed while I was away with the band, and my son, we were due to fly home from Perth, which is on the other side of the country, and it was that Sunday morning, and we were, and of course you're 3.5 hours behind. So my eldest son rang me and told me, and once you don't actually, my experience, and one I've shared with other parents, so I know I'm not talking generally here, but I'm on good ground. You go into a state of shock, which is that's what saves your sanity. And the body has an amazing way of taking care of you in times of trauma. And, like if people suffer physical injury and they go into shock, so they don't feel it, right, as much, or they don't, it protects them from the trauma of being bitten by a shark or having a leg smashed on a motorcycle or whatever it may be. So you go into shock. Well, it's the same. The body goes into shock. Well, it's when you're trying to process something, and there's no intellectual process involved. It's pure emotion. It's emotion at its rawest. Your body goes, your mind, your capacity for feeling goes into shock. Otherwise, because, you would think that, I'm going to only remember the good things. That comes months later. The first thing is to survive. You have to survive the unsurvivable. You have to accommodate the unimaginable, whatever terminology people. So in those few weeks, I came home. I came straight here. My children were here, and we locked ourselves in the house for 2 weeks. And I was just in a complete. Of course we were. We just lost. They just lost a sibling. I just lost a son. And so the state of shock was so immense that at the time you don't know how you could possibly survive this with any sort of level of sanity. And I'm still not sure, all these 5 years later, I'm still not sure. So I still haven't processed as well as I could or should, but I'm working on it. So the mind in the state of shock, it's like, like you've heard the thing about people, like 3 bystanders see a car roll over and there's a child in there and it's trapped and the car's going to catch fire, and they lift the car up.
Yeah.
Like superhuman strength.
The adrenaline gets to them, yeah.
So you're capable, like someone can swim, like for hours if a boat capsizes or whatever. They can do things that they couldn't normally do. And I looked up after a couple of weeks. So this is November, as you know. And I thought I could see a lifeline. I mean, I was surrounded by enough love and support to keep me sane and to keep me sort of wanting to get up the next day. Because there's this terrible feeling where nothing makes sense and you just think, like, fuck it. It's like I've said to people, particularly when I've done public speaking, there's a time where you go through life and you think, I've done all the right things, or I've tried to atone for my sins, so to speak, or my, you know, uh, impediments, whatever. And no matter how good a life you do lead, life's not cruel. It's just what happens is cruel. Because life doesn't set out to be cruel. That's living. You can't live without expecting to have to endure these things. Not everybody, obviously. But anyway, getting back to the thing, I thought the one thing, and I knew Liam would want me to anyway, because Liam was a player, and he would want me to keep performing. But it was a life. It was a lifeline back to the real world that I have to return to at some stage. You've got to go back to the real world. See, I for months I couldn't go to the supermarket because I knew people would come up to me and want to hug me and offer their condolences, and I just couldn't face that. So getting back, what apart from my children, what's the greatest love of my life? My band, my music.
Yeah.
So I thought, if I'm going to re-engage in life, if I'm going to reunite with life, in other words, I'm going to pick up and live again. The best place to start was, on the stage. So yeah, it saved my sanity. It was my introduction back into life, and it was, when you think about it, as a performer, what better way than to start living again?
Than to get back out on stage.
On the stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, ending this on a little bit more of a positive note, I know you've said before that potentially there'll be some new music from Rose Tattoo. Is that still in the plans?
Oh yeah, well, we're working on material now.
Is that something that might come out this year, or are we still probably looking at next year?
I'm kind of hoping it'll be out for Christmas. Yeah.
Oh wow.
We're going to take a break in a few weeks, and we have a break for about 8-10 weeks, I think, maybe 12 weeks, depending on work. And yeah, so we'll start demoing, and the way recording is done these days, and it's like we've never been obviously we've never been a band that's been weighed down by sort of studio perfection. We sort of pretty much record all our back bed tracks live, and overdub, obviously, solos and vocals. But we can record an album very quickly, and we've got a couple of studios where we can work very comfortably, and it's out of the way, and just come and go as we please. So yeah, we've got a whole lot of ideas. Got far more ideas than you need for a 10 or 12 track album. But it's got some really, really cool ideas coming to fruition. So definitely this particular lineup will record that. And then next year, I've talked to Geordie Leach, the bass player, and Rob Riley, the guitar player, who we did Scarred for Life, that album with Rob. They were his songs. And then later on, we did an album with Rob and Steve King playing bass. We did an album in Germany called Pain. So next year I'm going to invite Geordie and Rob to come back and play a tour with us, in a salute to their contribution to the band. And it gives the fans the opportunity to say goodbye to them as well.
And you also mentioned earlier during our chat here about another book because you wouldn't tell me the one story because it's going to be in the book. So when is that going to come out?
Well, we're working on the book now.
So
and it's a major publishing house here in Australia, and they've published other books. And they approached me and they said a couple of years ago and said, "Are you ready to write a book?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And I mean, obviously when I say obviously, they want it to be like autobiographical, so they want the story of my life, but they said, like, the fascination will be that if you're to divide my life in half, the larger half, so to speak. I've been in Rose Tattoo, or a member or associated with the name Rose Tattoo for more than half of my life. So they want to, obviously, the book is about me from childhood to now, my views, my philosophies, if you like, but predominantly about my life. Because I did a lot of television here. I did television for years.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Australia.
And Mad Max.
And, they just, yeah. Well, I've done several films, but they were. I'm going to work with a ghostwriter, and so hopefully that'll be out possibly by the end of the year, certainly by early next year.
So a lot going on. Anything else that we need to mention as we wrap this one up? Anything else that we missed coming up?
No, not really. I don't know that a change of government can change our situation, but I am holding out. I won't give up until it's over. I won't give up on the possibility that we may be able to come and do some dates, a run of club dates in America. But we'll have to wait and see, because you never know what life's got in store for you.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Angry, thank you for coming on. It really has been an honor, and I've been hearing your name my entire life. My Uncle Tom is a hardcore Rose Tattoo fan. When I told him you were coming on the show, he was through the roof. So it was great to have you on. I appreciate it, and there's so much stuff that I had that we did not get to. So I would love to do this again down the road. Get to everything else that we didn't cover. And I'll write down those the songs from the solo record, and I'll tell you which parts I thought sounded like Ozzy.
Yeah, I'm fascinated, absolutely fascinated, and I'm very grateful that you took the time to discover that album, because Blood from Stone, of course, is very, very LA rock, but with Beats from a Single Drum, we got close, and for a first effort for a solo album, after so many years of being the frontman, the singer, the songwriter, or the lyric writer for Rose Tattoo, I was wondering about how far afield we could wander, and I thought, well, the further the better, to get right away from it. So, we introduced the different, like the more sophisticated, if you like, studio techniques. It's a very studio sounding album, and we worked very, very hard on the writing and particularly the arranging of the songs, so that they took on a far different persona than the Rose Tattoo material. So I'm happy. I was extremely happy that we achieved so much in so little time with our first effort. And I was so excited that it was so disappointing. It crushed me that they didn't get it, that the record panicked, the record label, after this listening party, and saying, well, we're not going to get airplay unless we're not going to get, the fans won't make the transition because it's too different, blah, 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 blah. And and I just thought I'm very grateful for anybody that I think in recent years, over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a re-emergence, if you like, or a re-interest from younger people in not just Rose Tattoo's history, but, along the way they've discovered that album and, and seen a different side of me, vocal delivery wise, but also as a lyricist, because there's songs on that album, obviously, that there's a song on that album called Michael O'Reilly, and that was written for Rose Tattoo.
Oh, was it really? No kidding.
Yeah, lyrically it was. Yeah, it was. Because I'd written a series of songs. About my experiences in the UK, and particularly we went to Ireland. I was deeply affected because I'd read the history of Ireland. Like a lot of Australians, there's a bit of Irish in our blood, the Anderson family, but even though it's a Scottish name, but there's Irish. And so I wrote several lyric ideas. One which is the first verse of the song on the Southern Stars album, which we're touring those songs at the moment. And it says, I met a man from Ireland and we were drinking in a bar. That song is called I Wish. And I wrote Michael O'Reilly around about the same time, and I wrote another song too. But anyway, even though that was written lyrically for Rose Tattoo, it transposed very well onto that album. But because they wanted rock songs, they didn't want, because there was quite a few songs that were more in the vein of pardon me, the Calling, Winnie Mandela sort of. They were more sort of elaborate songs, vocal arrangement wise and music arrangements, and they wanted more rock songs, which is because they were worried that they were going to have trouble marketing. And of course, what sealed the deal for them was when they had this listening party and all these so-called experts, on-air DJs said, well, how are you going to market Angry Anderson, the baddest boy in rock and roll, singing a song about a fucking whale, So anyway, I appreciate your observation and your appreciation of that work, because it's a very, very important album for me, like all the albums that I'm involved in. I think those two albums were, as you can realise, there was only two that were produced by Mushroom, so we didn't get to the third one.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's quite a few vocal ideas, lyric ideas that are left over that I was writing for that third album that are still there. That's why I reconnected with Andy Sishon. Because he was involved in some of those songs. But, like I said, he's very busy playing bass for Billy Joel at the moment.
Yeah, that's definitely quite a gig to have. But, well, Angry, thank you.
Yeah, really.
But thank you again so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it, and looking forward to doing this again, and hopefully, by any stroke of luck, hopefully seeing Rose Tattoo over here in the States, if we're lucky.
Oh, let's just hope so. I mean, it'll be a dream come true.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on. Appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.